and sat in the quiet of her living room, the clock ticking softly, the only sound in an otherwise empty house. The evening stretched before her, quiet and solitary, as it had on so many nights before. She glanced around the room, taking in the familiar trappings of a life carefully built, photographs on the mantel, souvenirs from travels, and little tokens of memories made with her husband, David. But tonight, those objects seemed to mock her, reminding her of everything that felt routine, stale, lifeless. David was on another business trip, something that had become more frequent over the past few years. The calls were shorter, his texts fewer. Even when he was home, his mind often drifted to work, his attention divided. It was as though they were living parallel lives, close but never quite connected. The thought weighed heavily on her, an ache she tried to ignore but couldn't quite shake. She thought back to when they first met, young and full of energy. David had been her everything, a reliable rock, a man with big dreams and even bigger promises. They had built this life together, a life she had once been content with. But now, something was missing, something she couldn't name but felt acutely every day. As she sat there, scrolling mindlessly through her phone, her eyes caught a message from Jake, a man she had met only a few weeks ago at a networking event. He was younger, with a magnetic energy that had instantly drawn her in. It started innocently enough, a friendly chat over drinks, a few laughs, and later, a quick coffee after work. But with each encounter, Anne felt something stirring inside her, something she hadn't felt in years. When he looked at her, she felt seen, desired, alive in a way that was thrilling and dangerous. The rational part of her knew it was wrong. She was a married woman, a wife who had vowed loyalty to the man who had given her stability and a home. But in Jake's presence, the lines blurred, and the thrill of his attention was a temptation she struggled to resist. One evening, after yet another lonely dinner, Anne found herself replying to Jake's messages, her fingers trembling slightly. He had invited her out, a casual invitation for drinks, something that felt innocent enough. She told herself it was just a friend asking for company. She'd go, chat a little, and come home, like nothing had happened. But deep down, she knew there was more to it, a pull she was barely able to resist. Anne put on a dress that night, one she hadn't worn in years. She wanted to feel beautiful, desired. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself, the same and who managed the household, who cooked, cleaned, and organized her life around David's needs. Tonight, she wanted to be different. Tonight, she wanted to feel like someone else. When she arrived at the bar, Jake was already there, flashing her a smile that sent her heart racing. They talked, laughed, shared stories, each moment peeling back a layer of her loneliness. She found herself opening up to him, telling him things she hadn't shared with anyone in years. There was an intensity in his gaze, a way he listened to her that made her feel important, seen. That night, as she returned home, a whirlwind of emotions coursed through her. She felt guilty, yes, but there was also a thrill, an excitement she couldn't deny. For the first time in years, she felt alive, desired, as if the drudgery of her daily life had lifted, even if only for a few hours. The days that followed were filled with anticipation. She found herself looking forward to Jake's messages, her heart leaping whenever his name popped up on her phone. They began meeting more frequently, coffee in the mornings, drinks after work, secret lunches that felt like stolen moments in time. With each meeting, their bond deepened, and the lines she had once sworn never to cross grew blurrier. In quiet moments, Anne felt the weight of guilt, a gnawing ache that reminded her of the man she had once loved, the life she had once cherished. She thought of David, his quiet devotion, the way he worked tirelessly to provide for her, to keep their life stable. But those thoughts were fleeting, overshadowed by the excitement of her encounters with Jake. As the weeks turned into months, the affair became a well-rehearsed routine. She had perfected the art of lying, weaving stories about late meetings or catch-ups with friends to cover her tracks. David, always trusting, never questioned her. He had his own life, his own responsibilities, and seemed content to let her have her me time. But the thrill of their secret meeting soon wasn't enough. Jake suggested they take a trip together, a weekend getaway, somewhere far where they could truly be themselves, free from prying eyes and the constraints of their hidden affair. The suggestion thrilled her, igniting a spark of excitement that she hadn't felt in years. At first, Anne hesitated. A trip was different from their casual meetings. It was a commitment, a line she had sworn she wouldn't cross. But the temptation was too strong, the allure of being away with him too irresistible. She justified it to herself, convincing herself it was a one-time thing, a final indulgence before she returned to her real life. And so, they planned the trip meticulously, choosing Hawaii, a place far enough to avoid anyone who might recognize her, a place where she could lose herself completely in the fantasy. She crafted an alibi, telling David about a girls' retreat, something she'd never done before but hoped would seem believable. He had encouraged her, telling her to take time for herself, completely unaware of the real reason behind her trip. As Anne packed her bags, the reality of her decision weighed on her. She was taking a risk, gambling with the trust of the man who had loved her unconditionally. But the thrill overshadowed the guilt, and as she zipped her suitcase shut, she convinced herself that everything would be fine. This was her chance to feel alive, to chase a happiness that had eluded her for years. The plane ride to Hawaii was filled with excitement and anticipation. Jake held her hand, their fingers intertwined as they talked and laughed, a couple lost in their own world. The guilt lingered at the edges of her mind, but she pushed it away, choosing to focus on the here and now, on the man who made her feel young and beautiful again. They arrived at the hotel, a secluded beachside resort far from the bustling crowds, and felt like she was in a dream, a fantasy she had created for herself. They spent their days exploring the island, hiking through lush jungles, swimming in crystal-clear waters, and watching the sun set over the ocean. At night, they shared whispered secrets and tender embraces, their connection deepening with each passing moment. But back home, David was beginning to feel uneasy. He had noticed the changes in and the late nights, the distant glances, the way she seemed lost in her thoughts. At first, he had dismissed it, chalking it up to the stresses of life, the natural ebbs and flows of marriage. But as the days passed, a nagging suspicion took root, a feeling he couldn't shake. One evening, as he sat alone in their quiet home, David decided to do something he had never done before, check their shared credit card account. He told himself it was innocent, just a way to ease his mind. But what he found sent a chill down his spine. There, listed among the usual grocery store receipts and utility bills, were 2 plane tickets to Hawaii and a reservation for a king-size suite at a beachside resort. His hands shook as he stared at the screen, the pieces falling into place. The sudden trip, the changes in her behavior, the secrets she had been hiding. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. And wasn't on a girls' retreat. She was in Hawaii with another man. David felt a surge of anger, betrayal coursing through him. But beneath the anger was a deep, aching sadness, a heartbreak he hadn't expected. And the woman he had trusted completely, the woman he had built his life around, had been lying to him. She had betrayed him, shattered the trust they had spent years building. Determined to confront her, David made his decision. He would go to Hawaii, find her, and face the truth head-on. He booked a flight that night, his mind racing with thoughts of what he would say, what he would do when he saw her. The pain was raw, but so was his resolve. He wouldn't let her walk all over him, not without consequences. And Jake were lounging on the beach when Anne's phone buzzed. It was a message from David, a simple, "Hope you're having fun," with a photo of a romantic dinner he had set up at home. She felt a pang of guilt, her stomach churning as she realized how far she had gone, how deeply she had hurt the man who had loved her. But Jake's hand on hers pulled her back, his touch a reminder of why.